How the f do you pluck? Plucking, which is also called pizzicato, is fundamental to the sound of every jazz double bassist. It's the thing that we do most of the time, of course. But there's something strange about this technique. Despite being so fundamental, there's no consensus on the proper way to pluck. How the f do you pluck? Let's look at it. So today we'll look at some of the masters, Ron Carter, Ray Brown, and Paul Chambers, and look at how they approached playing pizzicato. I'll break down what they do and share some tips on how you can apply the way that they approached pizzicato technique to your own playing. So let's look at Ron Carter first, see how he approaches it. I should acknowledge that there are some great resources online that you can use to check this stuff out on your own. First video I want to take from is a Ron Carter bass lesson video with Brady Watt. Really appreciate that this content is online for free. You can really see how Ron Carter would approach teaching you. Have a look at 2117. So Ron introduces this idea here. He puts a little bit of Velcro on the bass neck, and the idea with that is you want to plant your thumb and keep it in the same place to ensure consistency of sound. This prevents the thumb from sliding up and down the fingerboard while you pluck, so you ensure that you're plucking at the same point of the string every time. So he does something a little unusual in this video, but anybody who studied with Ron Carter knows that he does this with his students, although I must admit I've never studied with the man. I would love to. I'm hoping that I can make that happen, but all that to say, he'll have the students take a little wine cork and hold it between their third finger and their pinky finger on their right hand. And while I understand why he does this, he's trying to restrict the unnecessary movements in the hand and therefore get the students to play through the string with the same part of the fingers. I don't know that this is really a wise technique. I mean, who am I to say, right? Ron Carter, the GOAT, teaches his students this way, but for me, I kind of question it because I wonder if holding something with these fingers causes unnecessary tension in your forearm. And you'll even see examples of Ron Carter playing live where he doesn't keep his fingers in this position. He tends to have a more relaxed hand when he plays. So perhaps he does this to help his students develop discipline and dexterity, but in practice, I don't know that you necessarily have to clamp your fingers down. But look at how Ron plays with the cork in hand. He has very little movement in his arm, and it almost seems to me like he's squeezing through the string. Again, as I highlighted before, he doesn't really play like this live, but it's an interesting thing to notice with the way that he teaches. He really tries to get the students to not overplay on the string, which is obviously very valuable for getting the true sound of the instrument and a less choked sound out of the instrument. Here's a Ron Carter trio video from NPR. Skip ahead to 140. So there you go. You can clearly see that his right hand, these fingers are very relaxed. And also, he does move his forearm a little bit when he plays. He gets a little bit of a bounce in his wrist. So that's something obviously that is different from the lesson video, but noteworthy because you've got weight in your arm. You might as well use it to get some sound out of the instrument. So there you go, walking at a higher tempo, and same thing, you can see his wrist bouncing quite a lot. It's not a problem, evidently. The man's almost 90 years old, and he's not slowing down, so clearly that works. So let's look at Ray Brown next, see what he does. This video, Ray Brown's most important advice for bass players, is a phenomenal watch. You should check that out if you haven't yet. So you can see around 45 seconds, Ray primarily uses his index finger, but there's something funny going on with his pinky. Have a look. He's got a little bit of this going on. He tends to use his pinky as kind of like a counterbalance to the index finger. He also isn't shy about moving his thumb on the back side of the fingerboard. You can see that he really moves his hand and always maintains what I would call a dominant hand position, where his finger is always directly above the string, as opposed to Ron, who keeps a fixed thumb and pivots on the thumb. Ray isn't shy about moving his entire hand, depending on which string he's on. Something pretty unique about Ray Brown as well is that he plucks quite low on the fingerboard, and that helps him get that really precise, pointed attack that he's well known for. It has nothing to do with the force that he's using, but rather where he's plucking on the string. He plucks at a higher tension point on the fingerboard, and as a result, it gives you a really pointed attack. It's money. So one thing that's kind of funny about Ray Brown is if you look at his bass method book, he has quite the interesting hand position for ballad playing. I find it pretty comically high on the fingerboard, and I've actually never seen any evidence of Ray Brown playing like this, but something to think about. And of course, the point that highlights is that when you move up the fingerboard, you'll get a softer attack. The closer to the bridge, it'll give you a more tighter tension and a more focused attack. Let's look at Ray in context, playing live. So you can see that he makes use of all of his fingers when he plays, as in index, middle finger, and both at the same time, depending on whether he's soloing or playing up-tempo. In this example, let's have a look at 540. So you can clearly see Ray Brown walking, digging in with two fingers, but also making use of a single finger. So he's kind of taking a hybrid approach to this. Sometimes he uses one finger, other times he uses both. Let's see if we can find a clip of him maybe soloing. Same video around 252. You get a close-up on Ray Brown's right hand. Sometimes he starts the line with his middle finger, but mostly he'll use the index finger when he plays, and sometimes both fingers together. And for faster passages, you'll see him alternate his fingers. So, pretty dynamic. Now let's look at PC, Paul Chambers. There isn't a whole lot of footage of PC on the internet, so we'll have to take what we can get here. This video is fantastic. This is the theme. And around 132, have a look at PC. So you can clearly see he uses both fingers at the same time quite often. And this is obviously a soloing context. Regardless, he doesn't lose any speed or power as he blows. And he approaches it in a similar way to how he walks, which we'll look at in a bit. So there you go. You can see very clearly, primarily using both fingers at the same time. You can also see how much he digs into the strings. It's quite a noticeable difference between him and the other two examples, primarily because he's playing on gut strings, most likely, but you can see he digs in quite a bit more than both Ray and Ron. Have a look at Walkin' around the 30-second mark. That's a great example of Paul Chambers walking. So you can see he uses quite a bit of force in his arm. Again, similar to Ron Carter. In fact, similar to Ray as well. These guys in practice were not shy about using the weight of their arm, though maybe in a lesson setting you don't get that information. So there you have it. Feel free to join me on Patreon if you'd like to get a deeper dive into how I like to approach pizzicato playing and how you can apply some of these ideas to your own playing. That's all for now. See you later.